Now, there are other results that I'd like to share with you, but before we go on to that, I would like to share with you some models, some ideas which may help us understand what is happening here. The first model is, or example, is a magnet. A magnet. A magnet is a piece of iron in which all of the molecules, or most of the molecules, have the same orientation. That is north, south, or positive, negative, if you like. It's just iron molecules, though. The difference between a magnet and a common piece of iron is that in the common piece of iron, all of the atoms are oriented in different directions, so they don't have any power. Whereas when we align them all in the same direction, that common piece of iron obtains a magnetic field and obtains a certain power which it didn't have when its molecules were disoriented. If, however, we place a common piece of iron in contact with a magnet, it temporarily, as you have probably observed, obtains the qualities of a magnet. And if we have a number of paper clips, one can attract the other. And when we take that common piece of iron away from the magnet, it does not have that magnetic ability anymore. But it has changed to a certain degree. And this is what physicists called the hysteresis effect, which probably comes from the Greek word ystera, after, which means that there is a small change which has taken place. That some molecules, under the power of this magnetic field, were reoriented. And so if we put this common piece of iron in contact with this magnet every day for 100 days, it will gradually become a magnet. Or if we leave it there for a year, it will become a magnet. Because all of the molecules being subjected to this field will be changed. They will change their orientation. So what is the example here? The example is that the magnet is our inner self, our soul, our higher nature. And the piece of iron is our personality, our mind, which is very disoriented. It goes in many directions simultaneously. So what happens in meditation is we put the mind in contact with our inner self. The thoughts stop temporarily. And the mind temporarily experiences this magnified state, this state of being energized or peaceful. When it comes out, the mind again obtains its normal tendencies of being afraid, of being anxious, of being scattered. But when we do this every day, just as the magnet begins to change, the iron begins to change and become a magnet, when we put the mind every day into contact with our higher self, then the mind begins to transform. And we saw that after 6 months, we had a 5% change, and then after a few years, we had a 15% change in the personality. So that we can see that the personality is gradually transformed by this daily contact of the mind with our spiritual self. So it's a very important thing. Another way to understand what's happening to the mind is, again, has to do with orientation. And that is the difference between a common light and a laser. Now, a laser doesn't have more energy than this common light that we have here. But the laser can burn a hole in a piece of wood, even in a wall. Why? Because all of the energy, all of the light waves have the same frequency and are directed in the same direction. The same energy exists in this light bulb, but the light waves are at various frequencies and scattered in all directions. So that light cannot pass through even a dark piece of cloth. Okay? So the mind, our common mind as it is now, is scattered like this light bulb. The thoughts are going in many directions and they don't have the same wavelength. In meditation, when we concentrate, then we get all the energies of the mind focused on one wavelength, on one object, and in one direction, you see. And so the mind obtains this power, the power of concentration, the power of penetration, in which it can penetrate into any subject, any problem, any goal, such as to create something or to solve something, and it can immediately have results. So the mind becomes focused. So the same mind, when it is focused, when it is able not to go in various directions, but to go in one direction, as we are training it in meditation, is able to be more creative, more productive, more efficient, more relaxed, happier, and even more loving. Another example is that the mind is like a plastic bag which takes the shape of whatever I put in the bag, or like this, this plastic foil. If I wrap something which is round, it's round. If I wrap something which is long, it's long. If I wrap something which is triangular, it becomes a triangle. That is, the shape of this plastic is amorphous. It just takes the shape of whatever is in it. So this is what the mind is. The mind takes the shape of the thoughts which are most common in it. So when I'm thinking constantly, I am weak, I am afraid, I am unworthy, I am never going to be able to do this, life is dangerous, I am in danger, then the mind takes this shape and it becomes stuck in that state, and it keeps thinking in this way. The mind is an organ of habit, and it thinks habitually. It thinks what it's been taught to think all of these years. So when we meditate, what do? We change temporarily the shape of the mind, because we're not thinking all of these things. We'll be focusing on Christ, we'll be focusing on light, we'll be focusing on love, we're focusing on emptiness, but temporarily, even for, say, a few seconds, because it's not easy, the mind can be freed from its traditional, from its common ways of thinking, and that loosens the hold of these thought forms on the mind. So the mind begins to take another shape. So when I do this for 1 year, for 2 years, for 10 years, for 20 years, for 30 years, the mind is gradually transformed. And it becomes more and more, takes the shape of these higher spiritual realities that we are focusing on in meditation, and less on these mistaken thought forms which we were taught as children.